Hi, this is the digital reader, and I'm going to start talking about books soon, I promise, but there's just some housekeeping I wanted to get out the way. Since I am talking about digital books, whenever I'm talking about books or show books that I really enjoy, I'm always going to include a link, and the link is going to be two links really. One is to get the book digitally on Amazon, and the other is going to be to get the book digitally on some other site. And that's because Amazon kind of has a locked-in format, and most other sites use a different format that's kind of interchangeable. So because of that, I just thought I would talk briefly, kind of a big overview of the big three file formats, and just talk a little bit about digital rights management. Now, Amazon uses the AZW format. The AZW format is probably the most popular format only because Amazon's so big. The AZW format, what Amazon did is they took an older format called Mobi or Mobi Pocket, and they basically tweaked that, optimized it, and then added some anti-piracy. Just so you know, in the digital book world, whenever we're talking about anti-piracy measures or anti-piracy built into a bookstore, we always tend to call it digital rights management. So for short, that's DRM. So for the rest of this, that's kind of generally what I'll be saying, DRM, even though every now and then I'll sprinkle in anti-piracy just to kind of tweak your memory of what that DRM is. So what Amazon did is they improved the Mobi Pocket format, and then they added digital rights management to it and kind of fused it together into a new format called AZW. The AZW format is Amazon's format, and you can only read that format in their ecosystem, which means on the Kindle app or with the Kindle e-reader. You also can only buy books in the AZW format on Amazon. No other book reader uses the AZW format. No other book reader is allowed to use the AZW format. Now, one thing to kind of keep in mind that because the AZW format is just Amazon's format, that when you have your Kindle, and a lot of you have Kindles, and I love that. I just love it when book readers get introduced to digital books and they're like, wow, I suddenly see what this is like. I remember a time before I started, focusing on digital books, where when I would commute to work, I would just always be like, crap, if I was like nearly finished a book and I had a commute to work, because then I would have to carry two books. So if you have a Kindle, you don't really need to worry that much about the other formats. Kindle's going to basically take any other format that you send to the Kindle, and the Kindle will, if you have an ePub, if you have a book in the Mobi format, if you have an ePub, using Send to Kindle, Kindle will take those formats and automatically change them to the AZW format. One thing to be aware of also is when you use Send to Kindle, it will change it to the AZW format, and you won't be able to change it back. So if you're using another format and you're sending it to your Kindle, still keep the original format so that you'll have it, because when you send it to Kindle, Kindle changes that to the AZW format, which means it's stuck in the Kindle ecosystem forever. Everybody else, they use ePub. ePub is the format for everybody else. It's the format for Barnes & Nobles. It's the format for Kobo, Pocketbooks. It's the format for Google Books. It's the format for Apple iBooks. And most bookstores are going to allow you to download the book in ePub format, or usually ePub or PDF. If we're talking about just reading books, then given a choice to download an ePub or PDF, you really should choose ePub because it's a much smaller file size without you having to make any losses as far as your book reading experience. So PDF, everybody pretty much knows PDF. PDF is pretty much the electronic format for everything else. You can do pretty much anything, any type of media can be put in PDF format. The biggest downside to PDFs is its file size, and that is why ePub was invented, because they wanted something that's just for books, that would have the smallest file size possible, and that would be the most efficient on small portable devices. PDFs generally, given all things being equal, I choose ePub. There are different situations where you're going to get PDFs. The most popular situation where you're going to get PDFs is by people who are self-publishing, and they're self-publishing on their own websites, or they're self-publishing, through different links to different personal things. PDF is kind of the homegrown format that most people use. If they have a better health guide, or they have a recipe guide, or a diet guide, they probably will do it in PDF, and then you can download it in PDF. Like I said, if you download something in PDF, you can send it to be converted in Amazon's AZW format if you wanted to read it on your Kindle or your Kindle app, but just know that once it's in AZW format, you can't change it back, so always keep the original. Digital rights management. Like I mentioned before, digital rights management is basically anti-piracy. When you're looking at digital rights management, there are three main ways that you're going to see digital rights management, at least in the landscape of today. The AZW format, the digital rights management is built in. With ePubs and most everybody else, they're going to be using Adobe Digital Rights Management, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then Apple is going to use, with iBooks, they have their own built-in digital rights management that is built into the iBooks app. So if you buy a book in iBooks, you can only ever read that book in iBooks. You can't move it someplace else that accepts ePubs because of that anti-piracy or digital rights management that's built into iBooks. Now, Adobe Digital Rights Management, that's pretty much the anti-piracy or digital rights management for everybody else. But that is kind of a good thing, because Adobe Digital Rights Management, of course by the first name, is created by Adobe. And with Adobe created it, and they license it to other ebook sellers. The cool part is, because they license it to other ebook sellers who use Adobe Rights Management, the books you buy on their sites are interchangeable amongst them. So for example, if you buy an ePub on Barnes & Nobles, it will use Adobe Digital Rights Management. But if you get a Kobo e-reader, and since it also uses Adobe Digital Rights Management, you will be able to take your book from Barnes & Nobles and also read it on your Kobo. Same thing with the Pocketbook e-reader. Same thing if you have an Android device and you're using the Google Books app. You can take any book that has Adobe Digital Rights Management and move it amongst other vendors who also use Adobe Digital Rights Management and their devices and apps. The only kind of minor caveat is that to use Adobe Digital Rights Management, you need to sign into and create an account with Adobe, and they'll kind of give you like a key, and you have to put that key into whatever device you're using that you want to use Adobe Digital Rights Management with. It's not a hard thing, but that's kind of the only tiny caveat. But once you do it, any device that you use that uses Adobe Digital Rights Management, you can use the books and read the books interchangeably, and that's a big thing. Adobe Digital Rights Management is my preferred way of buying books. If I can't get a book through Adobe Digital Rights Management ePub, then of course I'll buy it off of Kindle, since I have a Kindle and I have the Kindle app on my various devices. But I just like the transportability of Adobe Digital Rights Management, since I have a couple e-readers and a couple tablets that I like to, switch back and forth between. I just kind of want to restate that Adobe Digital Rights Management is kind of for everybody who's not the big two. So Apple does not use Adobe Digital Rights Management, although they do use ePubs. They use their own anti-piracy or digital rights management. And Amazon uses the AZW Format, which has its own digital rights management baked in. So that's pretty much it for this. I do want to mention, like I said, I have about 3 more of these kind of housekeeping to talk about, and hopefully that'll take me to the end of January, and I can talk about the books I read in January. I'm still hoping I can get to 5 books in January, but we'll see how that plays out. Once again, my goal is 24 in 2024, so I'm not pushing myself or trying to do anything crazy, but that's just the books I read this month. I guess that's it. That's all I have to really say. So catch y'all later. Keep reading.